Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Anna Dana, head of growth at Saas Group, a serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. And today with me is Francois, founder of the SaaS content platform and a community for the SaaS founders in Quebec, and also a founder of Snipcart, an e-commerce solution that enables businesses to add shopping cart capabilities to existing websites that he actually exited in 2021. And this is one of the things that we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the show.
What's up? Pleasure to be here.
Awesome to have you here. Well, before we jump into anything else, I would love to get into your background and what got you to build Snipguard and everything else after in the first place.
Yeah, sure thing. So that's the kind of OCD in me talking, but I'm not technically a founder at Snipcart. I'll talk about it a bit later, but I came in basically as an intern, and I acquired some equity along the way and became the CEO later on. So that's kind of the credit where credit is due type of stuff. And yeah, as for my background, I mean, I was always kind of a kid with a lot of imagination for good and bad. So I love stories, fantasy, sci-fi. I started writing when I was really young, mostly like fantasy stories and that type of stuff. And when I grew older, like teenage, then I kind of fell in love with hip hop and rap. So I would write kind of poems and rhymes. And eventually in uni, when I got a bit more mature, like stuff like essays and novels and poems again. So that's kind of how I started in the business world, more as a copywriter than a founder or a product person or even a marketer. I studied business and comms at uni. I didn't quite like the available internships that were offered in the program, so I just found my own internships, which led me to a cool design agency in my own town. And then from there, I learned about Snipcart, that very, very new startup that had just been launched inside another agency. So for my last internship, I said, you know what, let's try and get technical and learn more from developers building a web app and not just sites for clients, for instance. And I applied and I pitched myself and got assigned to kind of marketing in Snipcart. And that's kind of the genesis of it.
Okay, well, please tell me there is still some rap somewhere on YouTube that we can listen to.
uh, Fortunately for me, these were never
Oh no.
never published, recorded but never published.
Okay. All right. I love those stories. But okay, well, let's get into Snipguard, right? What is it? And
Yeah.
yeah, how did you decide that from internship your path will be to eventually acquiring some equity and becoming the CEO?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you it was like a grand master plan and very intentional by design, but it was not. So let me just put the basics down. So Snipcart is a shopping cart platform for developers. It was bootstrapped inside a web development agency called Spectrum. So really like low budget, slow growth type of approach to going to market and growing. The initial pain that it was solving was really like a an OG client of the agency needed to do e-com on an existing website, but they didn't really have the budget to refactor. And at the time was like a Magento or the early days of Shopify. So the co-founders found a way to inject e-com safely via the front end of any site. And then I joined as an intern, and I didn't even know if I wanted my career to be in tech startups. But after, I'd say, a year of like just, I like to say, throwing noodles on the wall and seeing just which ones stick. Uh, Here, the noodles being marketing channels and marketing tactics. I kind of figured out that content marketing and SEO would really match our audience. They were developers, very autonomous and independent and looking for themselves. So I managed with, I'd say, was it 2 3 years to build like a kind of an organic acquisition machine through content and SEO. And from there, I really had a lot of fun. Like it was mixing a whole bunch of stuff that I loved, and it fit with our business model and our bootstrap kind of vibe. So, it was bootstrap, so not the biggest salary in town. And as a retention mechanism, if you will, the co-founders like said, "Hey, let's cut you into the equity, so you'll be incentivized to stay as long as possible." And from there, like I don't know, it felt like the ownership inside of my psyche and how I acted in the company, I think, really soared. And I managed to build a little small team of marketers to operate and grow and improve that machine that I had built. And then I could focus on product, which was kind of, I was discovering how much I liked messing around with UX and product and roadmaps and all that good stuff. So I did that for a bit. And there was kind of a leadership void, if you will, inside Snipcart. So we had like four partners. If let's count me as a late co-founder, so four. Two of us were full time. The other two were really involved with the web development agency that I mentioned, Spectrum. So there was no like CEO in place. So one of them suggested I try it out. So I negotiated more equity and said, let's dedicate like 5 years of my career into that, and try to grow into that role and grow the business at the same time. So that whole journey is like a 8.5 9 years type of period. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's still a great path, being in this new space and just growing from an intern to the CEO. Well, I feel like it took some guts to do that. But what would you say was the biggest kind of learning for you in this
Mm.
journey to the CEO? What was and maybe what was the most challenging?
Um, the most challenging was the rhythm of growth, because incentives in vision inside the Snipcart was a company in and of itself, right? It was spun off as its own corporation, I think 2-ish years into it. And you have to understand that two of the people were owning most of the shares on at another company, which they needed to preserve and nurture, because that company was, in the beginning at least, kind of the the that's where most of the revenue was coming from. So our early salaries were going from there before we managed to had a bit of an escape velocity in our own growth at Snipcart. So they were very cautious about the capital they would inject in that company. And to the two partners that were operational, like Charles and me, we didn't necessarily have the breadth of experience or the mindset to see it that way. Like we would often feel, a bit contrived and a bit slowed, and we would see other startups either get funding or be all in and have more revenue and hire and grow faster than us, and we would go, we cannot, get to where we want at this pace. So there was a tension there that was hard to juggle for a while. And then, so that was the most, I think, challenging. Yeah. And then the learnings, I guess the real hard part about growing a business is not software. It isn't even marketing. Marketing is hard. I think it's getting harder than code and software in many respects. The hardest thing is just humans. And it's messy and it's complicated. And I messed up a few hires, and like a false positive that you take on and take into the team. Sometimes it'll take months, if not years, to realize how much of a mistake that was and how much you got to pay for that mistake, but on a different time scale. So I guess like I learned a lot about hiring, managing people, like giving constructive feedback without being an asshole, and being direct enough, and like motivating people. Like people want to do business with people. So yeah, I guess the malleability of culture as well. Like the culture of your company is what you want it to be. Like act like you want it to look, and it will eventually feel like that, and hire people who love that idea or love like the idea of working with you, and then it'll create something coherent. So yeah, I guess messiness of humans, and you cannot scale companies without humans, so you have to get your hands dirty and really understand that part of the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I had a podcast where a founder said business is easy. People are what makes it complicated. And it's since she said it, it was kind of the it's just kind of the theme of all the podcasts since then. And it's really interesting to see how it unfolds. But let's get to the acquisition, right? And I know it
Mhm.
was a surprise for you guys that you even went for it. What was the, what was something that tipped you off that this is the offer that you want to
Mm.
entertain?
Yeah. So around 2020, I think like I was doing a bit of like founder marketing. So doing some updates on my blog, on Twitter, going on some podcasts when I kind of got the confidence to, I don't know, own my role and my talent or my words more. So I guess we put out a little bit of a word that Snipcart was doing well, and we were nearing. We got to 1 million in annual recurring revenue. I think in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, just or during the pandemic. I'm not sure. 2019 or 2020, whatever. And then you kind of pop up on different radars, right? Right. So you got uh, saas.group, you folks, right, reached out at this way back. I think the group was just getting started. We had bigger strategic players in Canada reaching out and say, "Hey, what are you guys doing over there? What do you think about the future of e-commerce? We could." So that kind of interest in acquiring a profitable asset like Snipcart, running with limited resources, right? We were like, I don't know, at that time, 8 people, so with very good like EBITDA margins. So we got on the radar a few potential buyers, different types of buyers, and one day, I think it was summer of 2020. Yeah, that was it. We got approached by an American Israeli company called Duda, DUDA, super cool company, and they wanted to talk integrations, partnerships, blah blah blah. And I didn't really understand where we were going with that discussion, and I was a little bit in a rush with some operation stuff in Snipcart, so I just told the lovely Tal, if you're listening to this, it was a lovely lady, and I told her, let's talk next year, you know? So it was like 6 months down the road, and the CEO reached out and said, hey, like, Tal told me about what you guys are doing. I'd love to keep this going. And I said, oh, like I told your colleague, let's talk in 6 months next year. So for me, it was just a polite way, maybe not a direct enough way of just like shutting down that conversation and just focusing on my stuff, on the essentials. But when the new year rolled around, so early 2021, they reached out again, Duda, so that time was the CTO, Amir, with Itai, the CEO. And I love these guys so much. They changed my life. So they reached out and they were like, hey, are you still interested in just exploring a partnership? And I had never wanted to sell Snipcart. We had never like architected any type of messaging or built documentation in that to that end. So it was really removed from my my consciousness. And going through some meetings, eventually they just plain said, hey, we would much rather own that technology and the talent that comes with it. Would you guys be open to an M&A? And I was like, I didn't even know what M&A meant at that point. I had to Google that shit. You know what I mean? So there was this dude in Israel, and then I think Itai was in Brazil at that time. So it all felt a little bit unreal. And so we discussed with the partners. And remember, for people listening now, at that time, e-commerce and tech startups were exploding. Funding was abundant, right? VCs were throwing heaps of monies at fast growing startups. And you had growth by acquisitions going on and on and on. So that's kind of the macro context in which we are, peak of COVID. So We discussed among partners. We're like, are these guys serious? Are they not? They seemed very serious. I did kind of a background check because by dumb luck I knew someone was on their board, and like, no, this is a legit company with a legit like approach. So we said, hey, we don't want to sell the company anyway. So we were arguing about a number. And then George, which was one of the partners, said, listen, we don't want to sell it. So let's just take my number, which he had the highest. And I was like, this is crazy. We cannot say that. And this is not what we're worth, and blah, blah, blah. And we just said, okay, fuck, F it. Let's pitch that number, and they'll leave us alone, and we'll just go on our merry way and keep growing ARR slowly. So we pitched that numbers, it was in the 8 figures, and they said, just, sure, let's talk. So we were a bit like, dumbfounded. Like, what the like, do we now we have to consider, it's kind of life changing money for all of us. So that's how it kind of started. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a that's a good story. But yeah, I because you have this blog, and whoever's listening, please go there. I spent days reading through. It's a great read.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
but yeah, I felt like it's a great example of taking control over the deal, because the narrative everywhere basically is, here's what the buyer wants, here's what the buyer needs, and here's what you have to do to please the buyer. And it's never about the seller, and it's never about, how you are also in control of what's going on and can negotiate and blah blah blah. And there was something that you shared about LOI. And again, LOI is kind of presented usually as this non-binding document that you could just, sign with this company and sign with
Yeah.
that company, and it doesn't really mean anything because you can always get out. But the way you described how
Uh,
it works and what you understood from the LOI
yeah.
was really great, and I would love you to share your experience.
Hmm. Yeah. So just to not portray myself as a savant of the deal making, like I listen to audiobooks by John Werlo, like The Art of Selling Your Business. I outreached to entrepreneurs and investors who had been through M&A, and I discussed a lot of the strength in negotiation came from George, who's he's been my mentor. He's still a great friend and everything. And so the way we considered the LOI was as a very important artifact, even though you can say all the non-binding stuff, and it's just a document that you sign and you can get out. Well, it's true and not, because at the same time, it is an anchorage. It is an anchor and a point of reference which will follow you through the deal. Think about like a very simple negotiation. If you start your price at X, and then later on during the conversation, the negotiation, you say, oh no, it's 10X, like there will be a delta between expectations that have been, even if they have been subconsciously set or like implicitly set, they're there, right? So the stuff you mentioned in that non-binding but still legal document is important, and it is really important to use your power as a seller while you have it, and that is before the LOI, before signing the LOI. After that, you're less in control of the process. You can still do a little bit of a like buyer due diligence and all that stuff, but there is more risk once you engage in the due diligence and M&A process per se. So, most deals, I don't know if that's a good stats or not, but many deals fall through. And as a bootstrap buyer, it's costlier to me than to them. You know what I mean? So while I'm accumulating documents and filling the data room and just like strategizing and negotiating with my partners and talking to lawyers and fiscalists and all that jazz, I'm not focused on growth, ops, managing my team, and I'm raking up legal fees that are eating away at my margins, right? I'm not like, we were not doing explosive growth. We were like sane and a healthy like profit margin, but not crazy stuff. So this is where you're taking the money from, right? It's your own money that you would have reinvested in the company or gotten out as dividends. So, like, I think it's not too dramatic to say that like a failed M&A can kill a small bootstrap startup, depending on the conditions. And later down the road, when either bugs or incidents or risks pop up during due diligence, prices and terms can be reneged towards the end of the deal, and like just due diligence can be stretched out and like wear you out. So the LOI, we used it as like an anchor for our non-negotiables, like the due diligence length, the cash slash stock ratio, the earnouts. We need to keep all employees, right? The vision of in which conditions would we sell our beloved business, this was like black and white, and we would refer to that throughout the deal. So that's kind of how we approached it, the four of us. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good example. This is kind of what we do at Saas Group as well. We call it like a handshake agreement, and we try to order whatever it is there in the LOI because, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're trying, like, we're also trying to negotiate everything before LOI happens, before we sign anything, and make sure that you get your lawyer and you start putting
and
money already in this.
and just so I'm not making like a generalization, it's important to remember that Snipcart was in a position of strength and in the early negotiation because we did not want to sell. We were approached, and we were not like, I've heard, like, I have a podcast myself, right? So I've heard crazy stories of like, hey, we will run out of cash flow in 2 months if we don't sell to the first buyer that comes. We're effed, and we we kick everyone out, and we have loans kicking in that we're cautioning personally. So like, you can be in a worse position than we were. So we were like privileged in that sense, but we leveraged that as much as we could. Yeah. It's also a filter of like, is the buyer really serious? Like, if you put in like a little bit of friction right in the beginning of the deal, and you're trying to make this LOI like a very serious thing, will they commit to that interaction with you, or are they just window shopping, if you will? So yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one other thing that I guess was really important for you as a small team was a cultural fit. And again, we talk about it extensively recently. And how did you determine it? And basically, what were the questions that you asked to make sure that everything you wanted to be for your team, because they're taking it with them, is there?
Yeah, that's a great question. We kind of interviewed the CEO, the CTO, the CFO, the VPs, even one board member that I knew. We just asked like random-ish questions to feel and learn if values were aligned. And like one example is that one day I remember I was talking to Itai, the CEO of Duda, amazing dude, and I was like, "Listen, dude, like you sound amazing, your track record is cool, but like I'm about to sell you what I've been working on a lot in the last almost decade of my life, and I really, really like what I'm doing. So I feel like I don't even know who the F you are. Like, do you ski? Do you have kids? Like, what? Like, do you like to go out? Do you take vacation? What's your idea of a perfect day? Like like it seems like dumb stuff, but listen, if I can't get along with you in an informal chat that lasts 45 to 60 minutes, well, it's probably going to be a nightmare when you literally own outright my company, my assets, my employees, and I am your employee, right? So I've I've always had like a little bit of a problem with authority for various reasons, and I think like it was important for me to like get a feel of, hey, not only for me but for my people, will these folks be great bosses and great colleagues, or will they make them run away? So we were thinking about our people through that, and it's like work means different things to different people. You'll get entrepreneurs who are really like financials focused and say this is an underserved niche and like it's boring, but we can do great margins here if we execute like this. And like Nick Huber is great at that. And I am so not like this. I am like the emotional, fun. It's like work should be fun and hopefully something you're passionate about. And for better or worse, that's the culture we've built at Snipcart. And for me, like, I would not want to sell my company because I needed to keep working there, and the people I loved needed to keep working in that new company. I would not sell it if it meant compromising on that whole quality of work and quality environment and fun in work. This was a value that we were optimizing for. And the Big Lebowski, the origin story of Duda is from the Big Lebowski. It's a crazy, like absurd comedy movie with Jeff Bridges, and just like learning these kinds of tidbits through more informal chats and understanding how they were able not to take themselves too seriously. That was key for me, because it was our own motto was like, we take our work seriously but ourselves not so much. And in Duda we found that. And it's funny because Itai said in a speech at the whole company after we got acquired, he was like, do not underestimate the power that your company culture will have in a deal. And for us it was like 100% true. I'm not saying it's every time true, but yeah. So yeah, the other stuff we valued was like, hey, are people going to be able to have career growth? Or are they going to get like empowered and get bonuses and rewarded for their efforts in Snipcart? Is Snipcart core, the product itself, going to stay alive? What are our customers going to deal with after the acquisition? And then as little red tape as possible, right? So I'm a fan of like minimum viable process, like just barely enough meetings or docs or SOPs to work, and then nothing more. So I wanted to make sure it was not like an uppercut of red tape coming our way as soon as we signed the SPA. So these are the things we reviewed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. Not in every case culture is very important. Not for every acquirer, because well, there are very different deals that are going on, and that's again something that you have to kind of realize at the beginning, like what if it's even important for you. Like, are you going to sell with the team, or you don't care, you're leaving as soon as possible with your cash, and then to hell with that. But yeah, I know also that well, because you mentioned that you have a bit more control over what is happening in the deal before anything is signed, but you also had to change some of the terms of your deal after, also because well, you had a bit of a clash of interest with the other two co-founders. What was the deal? How did you have to change it? And yeah, how did the how did Duda react? Because well, like you said, in the LOI,
Yeah.
everything was there, and
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great question. So yeah, four partners. We all needed to sign on and agree for this sale to work, and that was very hard. That was the hardest part by far. It was like, to put it simply, it was a question of like alignment of incentives and of timing. So I would say that two of the partners were less operationally involved, and in terms of just wealth and bets, like business bets placed, they were more diversified than the Charles and me. So that creates like a different time preference, different risk profile. So that is what we really had to work on. And we were all great friends, but we were not at our best psychologically, I think, because this is pressure and like something that you have not expected and never worked through before. And also we were all freaking isolated because of COVID, right? So George was in Switzerland, Charles, Vincent and me were in Quebec, and then some people in Duda were in Colorado, some SF, some in Israel. So that was a little bit of a nightmare. But for the four partners, we managed to, negotiate something that would really please the two non-operating partners and give them a clean exit where like they would not put obstacles in the way of the deal if they had these terms. So we negotiated this among us, the four of us. After that, I negotiated this for them with Duda agreed because Duda understood that, it was just getting that clean exit package and getting these two founders to leave was the best thing they could do because they would not get involved in operations. They would not be part of the earnouts. They didn't want to have anything to do with Duda moving forward, which is totally fine. They had great reasons for that. But Charles and me, we had the whole earnout part and transition and all that stuff. So Duda worked with us on that. Nothing to say there. I think they were just great. For us, it was like internally, the four partners, I think at one point I was like, yeah, some friendships will not survive this deal. And I'm a very emotional type of dude. So it's super hard for me. The tip I can say for people is run hypothetical growth and exit scenarios with your co-founders very, very early on, right? Like just like put yourself in that imaginary world and see how people react, right? Because if it's like a gut-wrenching opposition of thought, then well, you have a signal there, right? You maybe have stuff to work on early, um, because it's harder, much harder to negotiate when there's a big juicy offer on the table. That was the first kind of hard part of the deal. The second hard part was me and the whole team, I guess, just figuring out the whole partners team, figuring out the how much like taxes would be involved and how much how'd you say that, like the earnout schedule and bonus and stock distribution, how much that was in play and in risk, like not necessarily stuff you have day one. And so after being helped by lawyers and other founders and stuff, I had to reevaluate my take, because in the beginning we were very hardcore in the negotiation for the two people that were exiting, right, George and Vincent, but we were more loose for Charles and me because we wanted to show some good faith. We said we'll be there for years afterwards, so no worries if we do like the classic 50-50 split of like cash and stock, and yeah, spread it as long as you want. But then when I did the math, with people who can count better than me, I was like, oh shit, if I leave uh, after a year of my earnout, for instance, this whole deal will not have been worth it for me. So I kind of reframed my decision around this. Okay, so I'll just say it like it is. If I am a millionaire after taxes after 1 year, then I'm taking the deal, because that's kind of enough to upgrade a bit my lifestyle, help out my mom for retirement, which was my biggest motivator, and have kind of a good financial cushion for the next steps of my career. That made me go through a kind of a early renegotiation, which made me feel super bad because I had to first tell my partners, hey guys, I kind of realized that I might not like do the whole earnout thing for 3 years. And with the deal that I have right now, I'm not going to be satisfied with that. So can I renegotiate? And for me and Charles, and they were super cool with this. My partners, they let us like renegotiate the ratio, the cash stock ratio, and the earnout schedule and all that stuff. So I went back to Itai and I told him, hey man, like I'm a noob at this. My bad. I didn't like measure stuff correctly. Now I have, and here's my framework. And I told him exactly what I just told you, or similar words. And I said, so here's what I would need for this to work. And he was like, hey, listen, dude, like I'm happy to work with you and like and be as helpful as I can. But this is far from what was inscribed like in that not sacred, but that important document, right? And I was like, listen, I know, but like, can you do something? Can you work with me? And he said, let me try. So he went back to his team, worked a few things, came back with kind of a counter offer, and I was like, no, this is not close to hitting my goal of millionaire after taxes after 1 year. And I turned around and told my partners, like, hey guys, like, I think I'm gonna say no. Like, can I say no? Like, because it's not just my decision, right? And the guys, the first ones, the two ones that were exiting anyway, they were like, hey, we didn't necessarily wanted to sell a business, so if you want to say no, you can say no. You have our permission. And Charles and me, we kind of thought it over and said, yeah, let's do that gamble because we still love Snipcart. And if we wake up in 48 hours and this whole thing is gone, we will still love our life, our work life, and we will go to work and build that business and not be anchored in a possible alternate world, where we made a lot of money. So we were like, okay, let's sleep on it 24 hours, and then I'm going to send an email. And that was the most stressful fucking email I ever sent. I just sent an email to the CEO and I said, hey, listen, it's been great. I learned so much. I'm so sorry. I'm Canadian, right? So I'm always sorry. I'm so sorry to do that last at that moment, but like, it's not going to work for this reason. And just as a reminder, here are our terms if you want this to go through. And like shakily, press the send button, and then for for 4 days was like radio silence, no news from the buyer, from Duda. And the guys were all like messaging me, hey man, did you get the email? Hey, is the email coming? And then Charles would send me like, hey, did we make the worst mistake of our lives? And I was like, oh my god, it's my fault. Like, so that was a weird 4 days. And eventually Itai wrote back and said, we agreed to the terms. Let's keep moving forward and get this deal done. And we were jumping in our apartments on FaceTime, celebrating, woo. And so that was kind of a bluff, half bluff, whatever negotiation. I was very lucky, honestly. I was lucky that the Duda guys saw a lot of value in the business, that the business was already profitable, that they had just had funding, that the culture fit was there. I was extremely lucky. Otherwise, that kind of bet would not have worked at all.
I mean, you're right to say like it's a great time probably to sell the business. It was a great time to sell it because you were growing, you had a ton of leverage, you knew your value to the buyer. So kind of everything fell into place. So yeah, maybe it's a bit of luck, but also knowing and acting on the best time, the best moment
Yeah.
when to sell the company is hard. So well, it seems like it was a little bit for you guys too. But well, still to this day, post merger or post acquisition integration is kind of one of the moments, one of the processes when deals fall through. How did it go for you? Because you had
Yeah.
joined Duda as a CMO, if I'm not mistaken, and you worked with
No,
them. No,
no,
okay.
no, no. I
Um,
just I just want
Tell
to.
me more. Sorry,
No, that's fine. Um,
but yeah, you joined them for a year, right?
a
How
year
did
and
it
a
work
half.
for you? Were the older promises kept for the team for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
We
yeah,
I guess it went super well. There was a bit of a transition period where you gotta like switch bank accounts or insurance providers and payroll, all that like admin jazz, which I for the first time I had to kind of handle because two of the partners who exited were the ones who used to handle that, and then it made me even more appreciative of the work they had been doing for us in kind of the back burner. So that went well. It was super tricky for us because like most of the employees needed to stay on when we announced, the acquisition of this company, because they were buying us to create a new product, which by the way they have created, have rolled out, and is generating tons of dollars. So from a technical and like growth point of view, it's been a success, and I'm super happy about this. So we were a small team. If half of the talent leaves and you're left with a tech stack that like the guys and girls in Israel don't know how to handle and code with, like you're kind of fucked. So most of our devs had to stay on. So that was a bit of a stressor, which means I worked my ass off for the announcement to be like shaped and handled and timed the best way, and how you frame the future and the employment contracts that everybody has to sign. So that all went well. So I was super happy about that. I think for the first year we had no departures, no one left. Eventually we lost two or three people, I think a year and a half into the whole thing. And I had to double the team. So I hired like twice the amount of people we were. So that was a big challenge. And just you get kind of acclimated to, okay, Israelis do not communicate the same way Quebecers communicate, so there's all that kind of adaptation. And after that, we visited Israel, Colorado. They came here. Oh, like it was amazing. Like for a while, it's kind of honeymoon. Like it's crazy that it's happening. Everybody's making bigger salaries. I have more money. I'm buying a luxury car, whatever. But when like the dust settled and it was time to really envision and plan the integration of our technology and the rollout of that new product we were building with them, then I got to work, and I did great work, in terms of like shaping the product, the vision, how we're going to go to market. And I did such good work that they promoted me. They said, hey, you want to be VP at Duda of product marketing and content marketing? I was like, wow, didn't even think about it. I said yes. And I had not accounted for was two things: the complexity of managing a 200 plus um, people company, like in terms of as a VP. I've never done that. I don't have necessarily the experience. It's not like snap your fingers and you're on top of the chain. And my energy level to adapt to that role and perform in that role, I had not fully recovered from the deal. Just the whole ordeal, it was still like my battery was not in green yet. It made it really hard. And I think like bigger companies have more intricacies, a little bit more of politics. Even sometimes, I wouldn't say there's a lot of politics at Dudub. It's just an amount of relationship and communication dynamics that I was not used to. For instance, having to sell an idea or a project internally to different stakeholders and decision makers, that stuff like didn't exist at Snipcart. It's like we're going to lunch, we're arguing on a feature or a marketing tactic. We say over poutine and French fries. We go, okay, if it, let's try it your way, and everybody is aligned. But when you have people in different time zones, different cultures, different heritage, and people don't see the world the same way, don't see just SaaS the same way, it's different. It's different to say the least. So I failed. Like literally, I just didn't. I didn't manage to be like the good VP there, and I was super disappointed in myself and the CTO and the CEO. Like I said, love these guys, and I was like, guys, like I'm not happy. I'm working 60 hours a week, and this is not my company anymore. I made most of the money because we hadn't renegotiated, like I said earlier, already. So like, what am I doing this for? Demote me and bring me down back to individual contributor, and I'll just take it easy, take care of my team in Quebec, work on the ecom product, and just like do my earn out. And as soon as they put me in that role, I just, I had managers and bosses on top of me, and I had to do operational stuff that I didn't really want to do anymore. And I was becoming a little bit lazy, a little bit cynical. And I was like, fuck this. This is not me. This is not what I bring to the table. It's never been that way in Snipcart. It's not going to be that way now. Everything's running smoothly. There's no like fires. We nailed the integration. Now it's time for me to get the fuck out and leave on the greatest terms possible. So I left kind of a few $100,000 in stock or salary bonus on the table. But like I said, most of the value had already been accrued for me, and I really wanted to do something else and be like 100% motivated. So I left on great terms. Still love the team. Still go and visit them. I think once a month, every 2 months. Every now and then I'll talk to the CTO, and they're crushing it. Like the Snipcart core is still alive. It's making more money than when I was in charge. So clearly there was some stuff I could have optimized. Also, like getting new customers without investment in marketing, Snipcart core, that's crazy to me. It's just like the potent aspect of the marketing machine we had built. When you, for 8 years, you do content marketing and SEO, it's like, it's not a inbound amount that just disappears like if you turn off the budget for ads, right? It's just slowly kind of withers, but it stays for a while. It's very evergreen. So yeah, I've been rambling. Anna, where what
That's
am I
good. That's
answering?
that was perfect. But I loved how yeah, first of all, thanks for being honest about this. I mean, earnout periods and then staying with an acquirer, it's not for everybody. It can be a perfect match, but it
Yeah,
can be, oh, okay, seriously not what I envisioned it, or like it's not a fit. It's either I'm now too high up, or I don't want to work with the bosses and the hierarchy and everything.
yeah. And they
Um,
did, just to be 100% clear, if do the people listen to this, they did everything right. Well, 99% right. It was me. I'm the problem. It's me. Isn't there a TikTok song that goes like
yes.
this? No, dude. Just I've been I've been treated like extremely well, and one of the only things I regret about leaving Duda is realizing afterwards how much I had learned, but more so how much I could have learned from running a SaaS operation at that scale and being so close to the C-suite and the and the founders and the talented guys and girls they had over there. So that was like a little bit of a missed opportunity for me. If I had just like calmed down and like learned more, I think I would have made more out of that deal. Yeah.
Okay. So we had this like series of really short interviews with founders where we asked, what would you do with the money after the acquisition? And most of the answers were like, oh, I would put it in another business, or I would put it in a bank, or I would. So you bought a car. Thank you.
I'm like, yeah. No, I can tell
That's
you everything I did with the money. Do you want me to go there?
that's like a
I can
normal
do it.
person's response. No, no.
Yes.
It's tell me what the car is and what the color is. That's it. That's all I want.
Okay. So I bought a Mercedes AMG C43 bi-turbo, like the sports edition. And I'm not a car guy, so that's the funniest thing. Like it was like teenage ego and adolescent, like a teenage
Tell me it's red.
desires to be validated and to be baller and to be like a rapper, you know. So I ran that car for like 8 months. I rented it for 8 months, then I bought it and I sold it, but it was like the used car market boom. So I made 10K on that. And then I just got myself like kind of a suburban Volkswagen type of stuff.
Okay. All right, but still, very very valid
And I helped
spend.
my mom. That's the
Okay.
biggest point. Please don't clip the please don't clip the the Mercedes. Clip the founder helped his mom.
Clip mom.
That's better.
Yes, I know. Sounds good. All right. Well, life after acquisition. Is there a life after acquisition? That's what I want to know. And obviously, for you, there is SaaS Pass. What is SaaS Pass? Why did you decide that
Yeah.
helping founders in Quebec and bringing entrepreneurs in Quebec together is something that you want to do?
Yeah. So you're kind of getting my style from everything I've been saying for the last hour. I like to tell stories. I like to share a lot, sometimes too much, about what I've been through and what it makes me feel and what I decide and not. So I did the same thing when like we sold Snipcart, right? Like the whole story I just said about selling Snipcart, I wrote a blog on 3 blog posts on it. I had a comic book made. I went on podcast. I went on lunches and dinners with founders, and I just spread the word because I think I was proud to have done a home run like this from Quebec. But also, like, I still needed a little bit of external validation from my peers and just for my own, like, I guess, self esteem, which is something I've been working on in therapy, but we can talk about this in another show. So, what spreading the word and putting that story out there created an inbound influx of founders from Quebec, just saying, "Hey, man, congrats! I want to talk more about this," or "Hey, I lived through that. I want to share stories. I am going to live through that. That's my plan," or "I am in this right now, the acquisition. Can you help? What do you think?" So I kind of realized, hey, there's a much more bigger number of one, cool SaaS, two, cool founders in my province in Quebec. And we all consume content like the ones you're putting out, right? SaaS with Unbound. And but the reality of developing and growing startups, SaaS startups in Quebec, as also a cultural, linguistic, and even like economic particularity, right? So developing a SaaS in that region has certain specifics. Let's call it like that. Language is the big one, French, right? The capital we have access to is vastly different from if you're in SF or even the UK. So the success stories we're exposed to, our networks, our communities, our content is different. Governments, taxes, everything's different. So I was like, hey, I've been heads down on Snipcart like this forever, and now I'm like realizing there's a community around me, and I want more success stories. I want this ecosystem to thrive. I want more careers in SaaS around me. I love where I'm from. It's not perfect, but I love it, and I want to spend the rest of my life here. So, hey, let's try and like create a tide that lifts all boats. So there's more success stories, more community, more talent, more capital flowing in, and we can have like the booming, I think, ecosystem that we deserve. So that's kind of how SaaSPos came to be. It was like, hey, let's create content that I would have loved to have when I was growing Snipcart and talk with people that I would have loved to talk to and do one to many, not just one to one in restaurants and hallway conversations, right? Do a podcast. So we have a podcast every week. It's in French. We have events, in real life events, where we record a podcast in front of an audience, and I turn up the like comic and humor thing to make it a bit of a show, you know. And we have private retreats for founders and a platform indexing all of the SaaS in Quebec, saas.com. So yeah, I that's what I'm building. I've been doing this for a year and a half. It's been fresh. It's been motivating. My network has exploded, and I'm also building, an audience for what comes next for me. Is it like a new SaaS? Am I buying an existing SaaS? Am I investing in SaaS? Whatever it is, I'll have like a tight niche, engaged community and audience from which I can draw from, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the network effect in acquisitions and, well, in building a business is great. So I
Yeah.
totally see why you're doing this. All
Yeah.
right.
And
Well,
we have to do something
yeah,
together. We have to do an event together or something.
we have to.
Not where you are. I almost doxed you. I don't know if you're public about it. Not where you are, where I am, you know?
Yeah. Well, getting a visa will be difficult, but I'm totally there
No, no,
with
no.
you.
But
We'll
we
have to
will
do
put you
something.
on the. You know what they have, like the iPad with the robot that rolls. We'll put you on
Yes,
these. No need for a visa. We'll just
that
have your
works.
face there, and then this is Hannah. Yeah.
That that's all you need. That I'm good. I'm good. And just bring me through the crowd and through the holes. I'll do my job. But I mean, the last two questions of the usuals on the pod. What so far has been the biggest win and the biggest failure? Can be for you,
Oh.
can be for the company, can be for SaaSPOS even.
Hmm. Um. Let's see if this podcast makes it. That's the biggest win. No, but jokes aside, like the biggest win is definitely selling Snipcart and helping my mom with retirement and financially. And the biggest fail, I alluded to it earlier, it's getting too excited or exhausted and hiring too quickly. It's a classic, but a false positive is way costlier than a false negative. Don't hire now, but pay later. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. Thanks for sharing it. And well, also please share a hack with us. And it can be anything, maybe, how to negotiate, how to be a bit more gutsy with the
Yeah.
negotiation with your acquirer or anything.
Hmm. People want to do business with people is another like heuristic or cliche. I don't care what you call it. It is 100% true. And when code and product becomes harder and harder to differentiate, people are going to want to work with people and brands and personalities and people they care about and that they belong with. Be yourself and be authentic and be a real human being. That's a great one. The other one is like I wrote about this on my personal blog recently, but it's like compounding effects of reps. So good enough, do something good enough for long enough, and you'll have more than good enough results and opportunities that come out of that. Whether it's content marketing is a great example with SEO. What else? Podcasting with network effect and sponsorships, opportunities, what and lifting weights, right? Lift heavier weights is super important for for your nervous system and for my mental health mostly. And I was like, if I am to be fat, at least I'll be muscular fat, so strong build. So that's my whole approach to fitness. That's dumb.
Oh, that's
I'm so
perfect.
sorry. I'm finishing on this on this note. It's 10 past 10 for me, guys. If you're listening.
Yeah. Um, and you're over 30, so it's bedtime too. So, but it's okay. Very understandable. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, great hack. Compounding effect is something that I'm experiencing myself. Not with fitness. Not experiencing anything there. Just but with podcasts and content and how much easier it gets with time, it's amazing. So thanks for a great reminder, and it's a great story. I would love to, like you said, we have to do another podcast about mental health and going through this turbulent times. So happy
sure.
to do that anytime. But yeah, thank you for your time today, and yeah, happy to see you here again.
Anna, thank you so much for the opportunity to say smart and dumb stuff late at night. It was very fun, honestly, and keep doing what you're doing. It's pretty cool the content and the moves you're making with saas.group. So I'll be rooting for you guys.
Thank you so much, and take care.